this computer. All right. Yes. So I said I was going to check the questions halfway through, but yes, the recording. Oh, somebody asked that privately, so you don't see the question. But somebody asked if the recording will be made available, and yes, this recording will be posted, and I'll email it out as well. So, so thank you for that question. All right. So what we're going to be doing tonight, I'm going to share my screen in a minute. I have some slides that I linked into the chat. I'll paste that in there one more time for everyone, in case you want to follow along or jump ahead. And so I'm going to introduce myself because I'm pretty new to the district, so you may not have any idea who I am. I'm going to remind you that this is being recorded. I'm going to remind you that you can ask questions in the chat, and I'll give you a brief overview of what's going on tonight. So in case you don't know who I am, it looks like my name is right. That's good. Sometimes my kids use my computer, and so I end up as Maggie Steiner or something like that. But I'm Adam Steiner. I am the Director of Technology. I started in January, so it's been a pretty wild 8 months here. I was a technology integration specialist in Halston for a long time, and I got my PhD from Boston College in curriculum and instruction. And so in addition to being a technology guy, I am an educator. My dissertation was on one-to-one laptop programs and kids with learning disabilities. So I have an interest in special education as well. And I have 2 kids, one going into 8th grade and one going into 9th grade, and we live in Framingham. So I also have a parent perspective. And one of them has some learning challenges, and remote learning does not work for her at all. And the other one is supremely independent and does not want to talk to me under any circumstances unless she needs money. So I definitely have the parent perspective as well. This is being recorded, as I've mentioned, and we will post it later if you do need to leave. If you have questions at any time, you can post them in the chat, and when we're halfway through, I will take them. This is going to be a real shallow overview of Chromebooks, why we generally go with Chromebooks for our device in the district, about Google Classroom, and about Google accounts in general. So I know you're parents of kids from kindergarten up through 12th, so it's hard to really direct this at you. But I also want to make sure you have the resources you need to reach out to us with further questions that you have. So right now I am going to share my screen. And let's go there. Okay, and I'm going to go to presentation mode. So, and all right, so I'm going to start presenting, and I will pause halfway through and look for questions because I can't see them while I'm presenting. So maybe I'll pause once in a while. All right, so this is about Chromebooks and Google Classroom, but if you have other related questions, I'm happy to tackle those as well. We're going to be going for an hour until 8, and that will include the questions that folks have. And the link is in the chat if you'd like to follow along. So what we're going to be talking about today is where you get help. I mean, that may be the most important thing because I'm not going to answer all your questions tonight. So I want to make sure you have the email address that you should use, which is the best way to get in touch with us. Second, we'll go over the basics of Chromebooks. That's our device of choice. In a perfect world, every student would have their own Chromebook, customized to meet their needs, and we're trying to get as close to that as we can right now. But some of you are using home devices, which is helpful to us because of the Chromebook situation that we have. So we'll talk a little bit about what it's like to use your own home computer for this. We'll make sure that you get the basic idea with logging into the Google account, and we'll talk a little bit about Google Classroom. So that is the plan. So the first thing is where to get help. And I just want to make sure we differentiate the kinds of questions that you might have. So if you have questions about school policies or about your individual school where your kids go, about teachers in general, or what the schedule is going to be, remote versus in person, all of that type of stuff, you're going to want to talk to your building principal Fowler and the high school, there's 2 building principals, so you can reach out to either of them. And at Green Meadow now you have 1 principal. If you have questions about a specific class assignment, even questions like, how do we turn this in? What should we use? You're generally going to want to go to the teacher first because they're going to know what they're looking for with that specific assignment. However, if you have a question about technology, my suggestion is that and my request is that you email your questions to helpdesk@maynard.k12.ma.us, which is a long domain that we have there. But the good thing about that email address is that, 1, it goes to all of the members of the tech team. So if you don't know, we have Jason, who's at the high school most of the time. He sort of focuses at the high school. He's also more of our network manager. We have Trish Friedman, who sort of does some time at Green Meadow and also at Fowler, and she's our data expert and our data manager. We have Dan Kenny, who's half-time but really amazing, and he works primarily at Green Meadow and at the high school, and then I'm trying to do at least a day in each building. But anyway, this email goes to all of us. It also gets logged in our system so that we make sure we get back to you, and if it creates a ticket, and the ticket doesn't disappear until we've made sure it's resolved. So so that's the best way to do it. If you email me, I'll try and respond right away, and I will try and keep track of it and all that type of stuff. I might forward your email to the help desk so that, just so I don't lose track of it, but you're going to have better results if you email this. And in some cases, Jason or Trish or Dan are going to be better equipped to answer your question than I am at that point. All right, let's go to the next slide. So, and I want to apologize in advance. I can hear my kids coming home, so at some point might have one barging in here. I'm just going to pop back to Zoom for a second. I just want to make sure that you're all doing okay, and see if, let me stop sharing for a second. Just paranoid that nobody's seeing the video. All right, looking in the chat, I can see that there's no questions like you're not sharing your screen right. So somebody didn't want to just pop a message in there like, we saw your slides. I'm going to put them back up in a second, but somebody just wants to post that you were actually seeing those successfully. Since I have everybody muted, thank you, good. That's a paranoia on my part. All right, so let's go back over there. Thanks, everybody. All right, so we're back to sharing, and let's go back to full screen mode here. And I can see a lot of you are in the slides as well. So this is, informational. What is a Chromebook? Why a Chromebook? So Chromebook is really an amazing invention that I wish I had access to when I was teaching technology classes. But it's basically a Google-powered device. So it's designed to take your Google account and drive everything through that and make sure everything is customized with that Google account. It starts in seconds. So that's one thing I hated about teaching technology classes in the past, is that boot time, which when the computer was brand new, maybe it was 20 seconds. Most of the computers in the schools where I worked, it would take like 2 minutes, 5 minutes to boot up. And how do you keep kids' attention in a technology class for those 5 minutes? Chromebook is virtually instantaneous to boot up. It has all the apps in the Google App Store and now in the Google Play Store, which are the apps you can get on your Android phones. So the non-iPhone people out there would know about those. But there's thousands, maybe millions of apps, and definitely hundreds that are useful for kids. There's built-in virus protection, so you don't really have to worry about viruses on Chromebooks. I'm sure there's like a real tech person in the audience right now who's saying that's not true, but it's pretty close. So it's definitely more of a concern with a Windows computer. And it stores everything in the cloud. So when you log into the Chromebook, all your stuff, your files, the way you've customized it all just gets put right on the Chromebook. So there's no way that you're going to lose it, which is, very good. Another nightmare scenario that I've been through in life, where you've done all this work and your computer crashes and you haven't been backing it up. The Chromebook is always doing that backup stuff. The other thing that it does is any customizations that you make go with you. They don't stay on just the Chromebook. So if we have a student who uses the Chromebook and wants to have an extension to do text-to-speech. So they can speak and the Chromebook writes what they say. And they install that. If they go use a different Chromebook, for whatever reason, that extension will pop up. It'll be attached to their account. So it makes it much easier to sort of swap out Chromebooks to go from Chromebook to Chromebook. You're not worried about transferring content. The other thing, everything's stored in the cloud. So if a student transfers or when a student graduates, they're able to go and they can transfer all of their content, email, Google Drive files, all that into either another Google account, if they're going to a different school or to college, or they can download it into a personal Google account or just into a file. So I personally love Chromebooks, and now the prices come way down. For us, that's a couple $100s to get a Chromebook. So a really great device. I've already mentioned most of these positives that you can see here, that it's fast, easy access to the internet. It's really internet powered. Battery life at least 6 hours, but really more than that, unless you're running video the entire time. So if a Chromebook is charged fully, it should last a good 2 days. But what I would recommend with kids being at home is that you just leave the Chromebook plugged in all the time. It's not going to cause damage to have it like overcharged. So you can just figure out where you want to have the Chromebook and leave it plugged in there. And that way it's always charged. And if you lose power, you get a couple days worth. No setup required for different users. So as I mentioned, if a student customizes it, those customizations go with their account. If you have more than one child at home, you can always have them log into each other's Chromebooks, and they're not going to mess up each other's stuff. As soon as you log into the Chromebook, it's only your stuff that you have access to. So if you have a shared Chromebook, and that's also the case with a home PC, or if you have a Mac, if they log into their Google account, they only have access to their things. And then when they log out and somebody else logs in, there's no mixing of files. It's all on the cloud, and it doesn't fill up your home computer. Greater security and confidentiality. The security part of that's about the fact that there's less virus issues. And the second thing is that if your Chromebook were to get stolen, nobody has access to your files. They would have to log in as you. Our Chromebooks can only be logged in with a Maynard account, and so there's really no value in them for anybody else. It has a built-in webcam and a microphone. That only works when the student enables it or turns it on, but I don't have an issue if you feel, or your child feels uncomfortable, covering it up with a sticky note when they're not using it. That's fine. But we don't. We have filtering power over the Chromebook when they're at home, meaning if they go to inappropriate websites, it'll block it, but it doesn't. We're not. There's no way that we can turn on the webcam or anything like that. And I already mentioned that it's customized for user preferences. So, and we'll talk a little bit about some of those customizations, but one beautiful thing about a Chromebook is that it can look the same for every student on the outside, but they can customize it to work best for them. And my research showed that when in the old days, you'd had a student who had different learning challenges or disabilities, and you would provide a device for that one student. Maybe they would be the student with the iPad. And once in a while, there'd be like a hipness factor with that. But in my research, a lot of times it was just a stigma, and kids didn't want to be the only one with an iPad or one of a few with an iPad or other device. So nice thing about a Chromebook is that it can look the same for everybody and do different things. Also, every Chromebook pretty much works the same when you turn it on. So if you are looking into buying your own Chromebook, we are generally buying HPs, but there are other brands, and when you open them up, they look identical in terms of the way it works. So, and the pricing's all very similar. So right now with this like global Chromebook shortage, I would say if you really want your own Chromebook, any of the major brands, HP, Dell, Samsung, you really can't go wrong. I wouldn't spend a lot of money on a Chromebook. I think, up to $300 is probably about it. You don't get that much more bang for your buck. Cons. All right, so there are, Chromebook isn't perfect, and our students, and you will find these as well. Chromebook is only going to work with Google Docs and Google Sheets, Google Slides, which is like PowerPoint and like Excel. So you can't actually edit now Word doc, Microsoft Word docs. So that's actually changing a little bit, but it's designed for Google applications. So we do have some, it seems to be mainly administrators who are, I don't know if they're tech divas or what, but they feel very, attached to their Microsoft Excel spreadsheet software. But we're slowly trying to train everybody to embrace the Google life. Doesn't recognize all file extensions, so there are some applications that you would run on your Windows or Mac computer that Google will have trouble with, but that's going away more and more. You need a Google account to log into a Chromebook. So in our case, every student in Maynard gets a Google account. So that's not an issue, but if you do, if you lose the password, forget the password, then you're going to need to get that to be able to log in. And it depends on an internet connection. You can do a little bit with a Chromebook without an internet connection if you've set it up in advance, but for the most part, it relies on that. So you need that internet connection. So if Verizon goes down or your internet connection goes down, then even if the Chromebook can turn on, it's limited for what it can do. All right, so that's enough of the sales pitch on Chromebooks. Let's get into a little more about Maynard. So the Maynard Chromebooks, when they're in the building, they're set to automatically connect to the Wi-Fi. Like we're able to push the wireless to them so the kids don't have to worry about entering passwords. When you're at home, when you first open it up, it's going to say, "Oh, connect me to a wireless network." So you're going to want to, have your wireless password. Hopefully, you have a password on your wireless network handy at home. If you don't have wireless access at home, definitely email that help desk link, and we do have some Verizon mobile hotspots that we're able to give out. Some people have already registered for those, and so we'll be distributing those soon. But if you email help desk, if you want to get on that list. Now, I will say they rely on the Verizon connection, so if the cell signal is very bad where you are, it's not going to be that effective. For example, in the technology office at Fowler, where I work, most of the time I can't get any Verizon signal unless I hold my phone up to the window in one corner of the room. So I have to bring the hotspots home to test them, but they do work. So that is an option that's out there. And why don't I go through this slide, and then I'm going to pop back over and check the chat if you're posting questions on there. The Chromebooks go through our filtering even when you're at home. So we have an extension on the Chromebooks that if a student is anything they're using the MPS Chromebook for, it's going through our system. If there's something inappropriate, it'll block them, and it's also recording that as well. But you also should look into your own home filtering, and I'm happy to help you. I know as a parent, I've kind of been through the paces with some of that home filtering, and I have FiOS at home, so I know that better. But I know even with Comcast RCN, with all of them, you can go into their router and you can do your own filtering. Also, if you're on a Windows computer or a Mac computer, there's filtering that you can put on. I have a free application on this computer called K9 that you just set some little filtering parameters and it sets it up. There's also ways to control, like if you want your Wi-Fi to turn off at a certain hour. But I think it's worth, as a parent, just my advice to you to, even if you're not a techie, to get comfortable with some of that stuff, and I can help you get through that, because there's definitely a power in being able to control the Wi-Fi. When your kids get to be teenagers, maybe the chores aren't getting done or the homework. It's real nice to be able to change the Wi-Fi password and say to them, all right, you want the new password? Show me that your room's cleaned up and your Spanish homework is done. And the rest of this I've really talked about. So when you first turn it on, it's going to want to connect to your home network, and they don't function much when there's no internet connection. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing for a moment here. So I've been talking for a while. Okay, just browsing through here for a minute. Yes, it's okay to use home laptops, and honestly, at this point, as I'll talk about in a minute, we're struggling to have enough devices for everybody because of this global Chromebook shortage. And any anything you're doing in classes can be used on a home Windows laptop or a Mac or a personal Chromebook. It's going to be helpful to have the Chrome browser installed on any of your devices. And we're happy to help with that if you need help doing that. Okay. Oh, hey, Mark. Yeah, feel free to pop in with answers, Mark. Thank you. I appreciate that. Mark Snopoli is the computer science teacher. Maybe he'll keep an eye on the chat for me, which is very helpful. Okay, so let me keep going because I see some of these questions are things that I'm going to talk about in future slides. So let me go back to sharing my screen here. There was one question about, like, if you have 3 people on all day, will your Wi-Fi connection be okay? And if you're just using Google Classroom or browsing the internet, I think it'll be fine in just about any case. If all 3 of you are doing like Google Meets and Zoom videos simultaneously, you might have issues, but it really depends on your home network and the location of your access points. So, keep in touch with us. If you're finding that's a problem, I can give you some advice. We've run into that here. I'm actually in my basement on our sort of an old desktop computer that we rescued because we were all competing over devices. All right. So when you do log into the Chromebook, it basically will look like this. In the bottom left, you have the app launcher, which and on the newer Chromebooks, it looks like a circle. Sometimes it's a magnifying glass like that. If you click that, it'll give you access to everything on the Chromebook. The area on the bottom is the app shelf, which is kind of where you put apps that you're going to use frequently. And we have some default ones that we put on student Chromebooks. You can get access to all of your apps either on this Google screen or using the app launcher in the bottom corner. And then that area in the bottom right that has the clock and everything, that's the systems tray. I know it's a pretty fancy thing for that, but you would click that to, if you wanted to change the wireless network, adjust volume, do any settings work on the top of it. Oh, and I'm blocking the top part. So there's some shortcuts there. I don't expect you to remember those, but some of your kids will get familiar with these. The screenshot one I find really helpful. If I just want to remember something quickly and it's not obvious, on a Mac, maybe you get used to I think it's like Control-Shift-4 or the Apple symbol, and on a PC you do like alt print screen. On the Chromebook, it's Control and it's the window switcher button, which is up in the top right there to take a screenshot. For the most part, though, in the bottom left, you see the app launcher, which might be a circle. Sometimes kids move that around the screen. They can customize it so it's on the left or the right. And then the other thing is to get into Google Chrome. Like when I go to email, and for the most part, this is the fastest way, is to just go to Google Chrome. And with Google, all the different apps that they have are all, you just type in the address bar, mail.google.com, and that takes you to Gmail. And drive.google.com takes you to Drive. And classroom.google.com takes you to Google Classroom. For me, that's the fastest way to get to things, but I'll show you in a minute. There's other ways to do that. Chromebook Care, this goes for any devices at home. When unplugging, do so gently. With a lot of Chromebooks and laptops, the weakest point in addition to the screen is where the plug goes into the side of the Chromebook. So you just want to make sure you don't bend that and or snap it off. And then in terms of keeping the screen protected, carry the Chromebook with it closed and with 2 hands. And sometimes people get in the habit of like having it open and trying to type while they're walking. Definitely, we try and make sure in school that's a no-no. You want to close it. These turn on right away, so there's really no reason to be walking around with it open. Keep food and water away. That is a quick way to kill the Chromebook. If you do spill water on the Chromebook, close it. Don't try and turn it back on, and just bring it right into school, and we'll take a look at it. if you can get there right away. If you're not, if it's not going to be able to come into school for a few days, and you're, if it was fully waterlogged, like dropped in a swimming pool, then you can actually close the Chromebook. Don't open it back up because you want it to stay powered off, and put it in a bag of rice and leave it overnight, and it'll absorb some of that water. But the biggest thing is to try and avoid that happening, because honestly, that's probably not going to work. So keep the food and water away from the Chromebooks. In school, we emphasize, like, when the Chromebook comes out, the food and water goes away. You can save the battery by closing the Chromebook when you're not using it, and plug in the Chromebook. The advice in normal circumstances is, we provide each student normally with a Chromebook and a charger. Bring it home, plug the charger in where you want to charge the Chromebook every night. Every night, plug it in, charge it in the morning, bring it to school. It's fully charged. Leave the charger at home. The chargers look identical to each other, and they're more easily lost. The Chromebook we can look up, but not the charger so much. So leave the charger at home. During remote learning, again, you can leave the Chromebook plugged in all the time, and that way it always has plenty of battery. So just, for your information about why, things are a little challenging with MPS Chromebooks. So we ordered over, starting in April, we put in our first order, but over the last several months, we've ordered a total of, I think, 700 Chromebooks, including Chromebooks for teachers and for each of the 3 schools. And that's all being paid for with CARES Act funding, so it's not it's not being taken out of a school budget area. It's the federal government is hooking that up with that. But there's these massive Chromebook delays that are nationwide. Schools all over the country are dealing with this, and so we've only received 100 Chromebooks so far. So we've been scouring buildings to come up with devices, and so far anybody who's requested one in grades 5 through 12, we provided them, and next week we'll do K through 4. For K1, we're probably going to be looking at iPads, but for their purposes, I think that's actually probably a better device, and we'll work with the teachers to make sure that the iPad is working successfully for you. Alternatives, if you need a Chromebook or you need a device, we'll find one for you. So ideally it would be a Chromebook. For the younger kids, it might be an iPad. We also, if we really were desperate and we had nothing left, we do have desktop computers in the buildings. We have computer labs like at Fowler. I think that the era of the computer lab shared devices is probably over, because every student in the building will have a Chromebook once we're back in school, and so we won't need computer labs. So if we really had to, we could actually bring a desktop computer to your house. I think there's some complications with that, so I'd like to avoid that. But if you're using, a home laptop, a Mac, a Windows, Chromebook, iPad, if you need help with those, definitely feel free to email us. We're happy to help. I think under normal circumstances, I'd be reluctant, to offer help with a home device. But given that, learning is taking place at home, and we're in some cases relying on some of you to do this because of our lack of devices, we will help you in any way we can. Really, the Chrome browser is the key. So you can get the Chrome browser for a Mac, Windows computer. It's built into the Chromebook, obviously, and for iPad as well. Excuse me. All right, so now this is more into the nitty-gritty that you probably are here for. And we're about halfway through, so I should take some more questions soon. But logging into the Chromebooks. So every student's Google account, which you will need for a Maynard Chromebook, as well as just getting into Maynard, even if you're not using a Chromebook. If you want to get into Maynard Google Meets for classes, you want to get into Google Classroom, you have to use the Maynard student account. Last April, March, when we went out, there were some Green Meadow parents who were able to get into Google Classroom with personal accounts. That was just because we hadn't had them set up correctly, because we weren't using it, and it all happened very quickly. But we fixed that pretty quickly. But definitely this year, if you want to be in Google, you want to get into the Chromebook and you want to be in Google Classroom, you have to use the Google account. The username for every student is their initials and their ID number, and then it's followed by @s.maynard.k12.ma.us. On the student Chromebooks, that @s.maynard.k12.ma.us will already be pre-written in. So especially for the younger students where that could take them an hour just to type that, they should be able to just type their initials and their ID number. And if that @s isn't there, or in some cases the Chromebook may be configured to be a teacher computer because we're rating classrooms for them, it may say @maynard.k12.ma.us. You recognize the S is the difference between the student accounts and the teacher accounts. So if for whatever reason that @s blah 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 is not there, send an email to us in help desk and we can fix that so it's there to save that time. If you don't know what your child's initials and ID number is, you can reach out to us, but I would wait till you've heard from the teacher. Teachers for the most part know them. Also our computer science teachers like Mr. Snopoli, and also Lisa over at Green Meadow, whose last name I'm flaking on. But we have people at each building. The teachers know them frequently. And so there's an example there. The password has not been reset since last year. So if you have, for most of you, you have children who are logging into the Chromebook already and successfully, whatever their password was, it will stay that way. For most Green Meadow students, it was ABCD followed by their ID number, that same same ID number that is in the username. And then the brand new students, just as a matter of policy, we switched it up a little bit, and it's Tigers. So I mean, you can try using those now on on a Chromebook or any Chrome browser, and that should work. And if you can't log in, now's the time to try it. And you may have to talk to your kids if they've set their own password. But you can try it, and if you have any trouble, you can let us know. You do need to use that account to get into Google Classroom, and that account to get into Google Meets. So if you want to get into Google Classroom so you can see what the students are up to, what your child is doing, what work they've turned in, you're going to need to get that username and password with them and log in as them to browse around. There isn't a way to give parent access to Google Classroom, and you can't use a personal Gmail account. And same thing with the Google Meets. They are limited to the Maynard domain, which is one of the reasons why we use them. We don't want random strangers to be popping into our Google Meets, our sessions. So, so we do have to get through this. If you're not on a Chromebook, you can kind of log into the Chrome browser, and it almost functions the same way, where all that content I talked about, like the extensions and all that, will come with you. So if you're on a Windows computer right now and you're in Google Chrome, up on the top right, there'll be a little picture of a person, and you can add a profile using logging in with the Google account. And that's going to create kind of a version of Google Chrome on your Windows or Mac desktop that has all of your child's information in there. And you can have multiple profiles. So if you're in a household where people are going to be sharing a computer, you can have a Chrome profile for each of the people in the house, and you just switch from one to the other in order to get to each other's accounts, as I said there. So if you have a Chromebook, you don't have to worry about this. You just log out of the Chromebook, you log into a new account. But this is if you are not on a Chromebook on a shared device. If you have trouble with this, again, you can email us and we'll help you out with it. Files on the Chromebook, everything is stored up in Google Drive. So this is, this is pretty specific. But as you download content, it's all saved on Google Drive. It's in the cloud. So if something happens in the Chromebook, we can always get things back. Even if a student accidentally deletes, they go into Google Drive and they say, delete this, delete that, everything is recoverable. So if something like that happens, don't worry, we can get the content back. I've talked about screenshots before. All right, apps and extensions. Let me pause for a second since we're at 7:35 and go back, stop sharing for a second, and then we'll talk about apps and extensions. Okay, I see a question about the kids being able to sort of hack them and install their own games. So definitely let me know if you notice that with your child, and we will fix that. I didn't hear a whole lot of that. There were some issues with high school students who needed access to personal accounts because apparently that had been allowed previously, and they had maybe started college applications or started different things with a personal account. And so they have to log into the Chromebook with a Maynard account, but then they were able to switch to the personal account where there aren't the filtering features on there. So, but that was only for, I think, high school students, and now it may only be grades 11 and 12. But if you have an issue with that with your child, let us know. We can definitely lock down Chromebooks. Will this work with Windows XP? Yes, as far as I know, I mean, Windows XP is like the old version of Windows. It's not supported anymore, and Microsoft is not even providing, I think, virus protection or updates for that. So XP computers are a little scary, but as far as I know, and the Chrome browser probably won't update, but it should work okay. Can we forward things to our child's emails? So right now, the email accounts for, I'm trying to remember, I believe for Green Meadow they're off, or maybe up to a certain grade they're off. And then for Fowler, they're definitely within the domain only, so you wouldn't be able to do that. And then at the high school, I think they're opened up, if I remember correctly. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I've gotten requests from Fowler parents. There isn't a way to just open up your child's email account for just you, and we really want to limit them to being able to email within the domain. So unfortunately, there isn't a great way to do that. Again, what I would recommend, especially for the younger guys, is to know their username and password and browse in there that way. And you can even create a folder in Google Drive for stuff that is shared with you and your child, and then you can log into their account and add things to that folder, so you're not kind of messing with their stuff. I see a question about returning a device. Yeah, if you borrowed, in the spring when we went out in March, I kind of in the dark with full PPE on, was scouring buildings for devices and getting emails from folks. And so you may find, oh, I don't need this anymore. We already, we have something, or we got a new one. So you can definitely return those. You can drop off any extra devices with any of the building offices, and we'll get a hold of them. And I actually would appreciate that. If you have a device around that you're not using, or if you ended up with two, please return one, because we're going to be doing everything in order to make sure students, we've done 5 through 12, but K through 4, we're going to have to do everything we can. Thank you again, Mark, for answering some of these questions. Okay, and I think maybe I'm pretty caught up with those questions at the top there. There's definitely issues. We had issues where, with a shared computer where, people would be trying to go into a Google Meet and it would have their personal account. They couldn't get out of the personal account to get into the student account, and it was blocking them. And those profiles that I showed you before, like with the Chrome browser and clicking that person, that's a good way to switch from one account to another. The other thing you can do if you have a Windows computer is have one person in the family use Chrome, the Maynard student, and have somebody else use Firefox, which is a different browser, and somebody else use Microsoft Edge. I think that's what it's called. I don't know if anybody uses that, but you could have different browsers for different people, and that would avoid that. And in a worst case scenario, if you're like desperate to get into a Google Meet or a Google Classroom and keeps putting me in my personal account, I can't figure out how to do it. One thing you can always do, just temporarily, is open an incognito window. So on the Chrome browser, if you go up to the file menu, you can go to new, and I think it's new incognito window, and that basically opens up the browser without any accounts logged into it. And so then you can go to Google Calendar, Google Drive, and log in with the student's account, and then you'll only be in that account in that window. So that's on a Chromebook. Again, this isn't an issue with the Chromebook. You log out of the Chromebook, you log in with the student's personal account. Yes, students can't use incognito windows, but it won't. You won't be logged in as the student. Like if you're logged in as the student in a Chromebook, then you won't need this. But this is if you're using a shared Windows computer and you're desperate to get out of there. But I know in our house we kind of have divided up the browsers and also use the profiles. So, all right, let's go back into the presentation, and then I will make sure I leave some time for answering more questions. And again, if you joined us late, this is being recorded, and I'll post the recording later. And you can post questions in the chat, and either I or Mark will answer them. So apps and extensions. So there are a lot of, I think right now let me talk about extensions specifically. So extensions are little programs that live, whenever you're in Chrome, and these are great for adults and kids. But you can see in the little red box there, the little things that are highlighted there. And these are little tools that you can apply to different websites. And they do a lot of different things, but we will be sharing these with you and students, and there's a link in here to look at some of them. But and there's a few examples here. I definitely like Grammarly for me, personally and professionally. And depending on your teacher, some of them may, if you're taking a grammar test, you shouldn't be using Grammarly, but it automatically checks everything that you're writing and points out grammar suggestions. So, but I definitely use that for Gmail. One tab is a great one. A lot of times, you have a few tabs open and the Chromebook starts to slow down. You push that, it condenses them all into one tab, and it speeds up the Chromebook. Google Dictionary is a great one. I didn't list it on here, but we have enabled for all students something called Read and Write for Google Chrome, which I love. It's primarily designed at students with disabilities, but it's useful for really all kids. And we have a premium account for the district for all teachers and students. It's called Read and Write for Google Chrome. And here, when I'm back in the chat, I can post a link to it. But some of the things that it does is it does text-to-speech. So, you have a long reading assignment, eyes are getting tired, you can turn it on and it'll read it to you. It's a computer-generated voice, but you have some control over the speed and the accent, so it's not bad. But, for kids of all kinds, it's, a nice change of pace to be able to listen rather than having to use your eyes, especially if kids are spending a lot of the day, on a screen learning remotely for the reading part of it. They can do speech to text, which has come so far. So I use it all the time with texting on my phone. But you can do it on the Chromebook as well. It has a built-in microphone. So if you have a paper due and you just want to get some ideas down, you want to brainstorm, you push a button. And that's actually built into Google Docs as well. If you go to the Tools menu, you can speak. And if you practice, you can put in punctuation, you can change fonts and font colors and all of that, text colors. So that's really good. One other feature of Google Read and Write, or Read and Write for Google, is you can highlight words in a document and then push a button and it'll generate a glossary for you. So if you have students who struggle with vocabulary, it's a quick way for them to keep track of words they're having trouble with and then get the information they need. So you'll probably be hearing more about these extensions from your kids' teachers as they suggest them for your kids. Google Meet. So, and we're using Zoom now, so I know there's some irony involved here, but Google Meet, and the reason why I'm using Zoom is because I didn't know how many people would show up. Looks like we have 79. There could have been 500, or there could have been 5. And with Zoom, we have this is like the district's account, so I have more flexibility. And the other thing is, it allows anybody to enter even if they don't have a Google account, and they can call in, and they also don't need to have a Maynard account. So Google Meet is the one that we're going to be using, your teachers will be using with kids, because it is limited to within Maynard, so there's security there. There were some really bad issues with Zoom, what they called Zoom bombing in the spring, where random nasty people would just pop in Zoom meetings and disrupt them by posting horrible things. So we don't want to take a chance that will happen with anything with kids. So you need to have the Maynard account to get into the Google Meet. You need to log into that account. Google Meet is coming out with functionality, they say in September. I pray every night that they mean tomorrow, but so far it hasn't come true. Hopefully by the end of the month, and it's going to allow teachers to pop up a whiteboard. It's going to give them a nice grid view with up to 49 people so they can see all the kids. It's going to let them do mute all. There's a lot of functionality built into Zoom that's not in Google Meet, and Google Meet is catching up, but I still think it's the product of choice. All right, I had a slide to remind myself to pause for questions, but we've been doing that. Google Classroom basics. All right, so let's make sure we talk about Google Classroom a little bit. So Google Classroom is a way for your kids' teachers to assign work, to collect it, to look it over, to give comments, and to grade it all in one place. So they're not like searching through email or Google Drive. And it's only going to work with a Google Maynard School Google account. So if you want to actually see the work that's being turned in, you would need to log in as the child. There is functionality in Google Classroom to have a guardian add the guardian's email. That's just going to send a summary of major assignments. I think it's a weekly email or something like that. It doesn't actually put you right in the Google Classroom. But if you want that, you can talk to the teacher about that, about adding you for the guardian summary. But if you want to actually be in there completely, then you would need to use the Maynard account. At Green Meadow, some of your teachers, we have enabled Seesaw if they would like to use Seesaw. Seesaw is kind of like Green Meadow for, kindergarten, first grade, second grade. It's very, you can see there on the screen, it's very simplified, and it works well with an iPad, which it seems like that's going to be our primary device right now. Some Green Meadow teachers will be using a Google Classroom instead of Seesaw, and some will be using it in addition to it. Don't freak out about that. We're going to make sure that everybody, gets the training they need. And thankfully, Seesaw is, it's relatively easy to add on because it's a more simple product or thing to use. But I just wanted to mention that just so you're not surprised if you hear something about Seesaw. So yeah, we can talk a little bit about this. I kind of want to go into Google Classroom. All right, we have 12 minutes. So let's. So one thing you're going to find is that when you're in Google, when you're in Gmail, there's what I call the waffle. There's 9 dots, and that gets you into all of the Google products, Mail, Drive, etc., including Google Classroom, Google Calendar. So that's good to know about that waffle. There's a lot of Google icons that you'll start to get comfortable with if you're not already, that are here as well. And with the exception of email, which I believe is off for our younger students, all of these, for the most part, are accessible. Google Vault is our tool. It stores everything, every email, every Google Doc for 10 years, so that if there's any, if we need student data, we can always get to it if we really need to. So to get to Google Classroom, you can go to classroom.google.com, which is my quick way of getting there, or you can go into any of the, Gmail or Google Drive and then click the waffle and then look for Google Classroom, the Google Classroom icon. When you're in Google Classroom, for Green Meadow kids, you're probably only going to see one box there. For Fowler and high school folks, you may see 15 boxes because you'll have one. You may have one for each class, each academic class, and one for each special. So that, that can be a little intimidating, I think, to see all those boxes, but they'll be labeled with each teacher's name and the name of the class, and they're all going to look the same. I mean, that's, the good thing about Google Classroom is, even though you may have 5, 10, 15 teachers using it, It's all works the same and it's all accessible in the same place. You go to Google Classroom and you see them all listed there. You know, in the past, before, you know, we really focused on this as a tool, you might have different teachers using different things. Even last year in the spring, you know, we had some teachers who were still using other learning management tools. So Google Classroom is going to be the thing with a little seesaw maybe mixed in for our younger guys. This is just the types of things that you can see in there. Let me skip through these and let me show you actual Google Classroom, because this, I think that's a little scary. You can access Google Classroom anywhere from any device, and there's even an iPad app for Google Classroom and Google Meet. All right, so let's go into Google Classroom, and then I'm going to stop in 5 minutes and just see if there's any further questions. But so let me stop sharing, and then I'll reshare again. Let's go to the screen. Share. Viewer screen sharing. Okay, so this is a teacher view of Google Classroom, just, you know, for your knowledge. So when they log in, it kind of looks the same. They have their list of classes. They have a button that says to review, and this shows everything that's been turned in. I just have some sample classes in here, so we don't have many students, but you can see from a teacher perspective how much simpler this makes it, where they can see, you know, who's turned it in, whether they've graded it yet, and they can do all of that reviewing and grading right in here in Google Classroom. And so there's almost no chance of lost papers, which is a benefit for kids. When, you know I used to, you know, when email was first being widely used, I'd have kids emailing papers to me, which I thought was awesome compared to having them print them, but trying to organize all of that. And then it was like, oh, create a Google Drive folder and have them put them in there. But this is like a beautiful thing. There's also a calendar that goes and grabs all the content in there. And the teacher can share this calendar as well, which is nice. From the student perspective, let me go back into one of these classes. Let me go into Biology B, and let me just show you. I'm going to create an assignment. So go to classwork. I'll say I'm going to create an assignment. And I can pick which classes I want, and I can pick the due date. So let's make this due tomorrow, and I'm going to assign that. Okay, I didn't write anything, but I could have attached a Google Drive file to it. And one nice thing that Google Classroom does is it will automatically create a copy, if the teacher selects this, of every Google Doc, one copy for each student, and automatically organizes them. And the student, when they open it up, they have their copy. They can, if it's a Google Doc, they can fill in their answers, and then they can submit it. So I can show that to you. So here is from the student view. This is just test students. So they, you know, so you may see something like this, and I've joined some other classes here, which is why you see other random teachers here. But that was in Biology B. So you can see it gives me this advanced notice right here. I have something due on Friday. I called it test like I was testing it, but it sounds like I have a test. But you can see, you know, me, test student here, I have a new assignment, and I can go in here, and in this case I didn't attach anything, but a student could click add, and they could go grab something from Google Drive, or maybe, you know, a link. If some of your teachers are going to, you know, get fancy and have the kids making a video or a drawing or something like that, and so they could attach a link. And then when they're done, they click mark as done, and that sends an alert to the teacher like, oh, test student finished their assignment, you know, you should go take a look at it. So so let me do one with a, and I didn't do this in advance, so you'll see what I have in my Google Drive here, but let's see, test assignment. All right, we'll make this due tomorrow as well, but in this time I'm going to do add, and I'm going to go grab a Google Drive file. So this is what what it looks like from the teacher's side, and here I will grab this presentation. Okay, so it says students can view files. So if I assign this right now, they could just look at it, but I can actually click this, and I can say make a copy for each student, and then I click assign. And so now this is just like my slideshow here, but teacher could put something in there that's a document that has like a name and then a few questions for them, for the students to answer. And again, it's going to generate a new copy for every student. And so, for example, here, this is student B, and you can see how fast it is. You know, as soon as they assign it, it pops up. So now I'm in as a student. I can see, oh, I have a test assignment due here. And oh, there's the attachment. It made a copy for me. So my name is test grade 7. So it added my name to it. So I can open that up, which is going to be my slides here. Do whatever work that I would, you know, answer the questions that are in this. Wasn't the best example of an assignment, but then I can turn it in the same way. With a Google Doc, actually, it'll have a button up here that says turn in. So you can also do it that way. You can just click that after they filled that in. Admittedly, like, that was, you know, to really understand Google Classroom, you're going to have to get into it. And I think, you know, maybe a follow-up session for us once, you know, we've gotten through this distributing Chromebook period here will be, you know, let me generate a class, you know, get your student's account, log in, let me actually add you to my test class, and we can practice doing some of this stuff. So you know, that's like Google Classroom is way too briefly, probably is making you more confused than anything, but we will follow up with you to answer those. So incoming kindergarten students. Yes, I think that the teacher will be reaching out with your Google account, but otherwise you can send, if you know their ID, every student's account is their initials followed by their student ID number with that S stuff, and their password is, for kindergarten is Tigers and their ID number. But if you're not sure of that information, you can email the help desk, but I believe the teachers will be reaching out that. Do students fill out their assignments electronically? For the most part, yes. Most assignments, I think they would open up a Google Doc, fill in their answers, and then, you know, push turn in and submit. But a teacher could say, you know, handwrite something or draw something and then hold it up and take a screenshot and post that. And so that, you know, adds a little layer of complication. But I think that you'll see more of that kind of, you know, real world non-digital combined with the digital stuff going on, because we don't want kids just staring at interacting with the screen. So, and that's something I love, where, you know, you might say, all right, you know, 10 minutes, I'm going to turn off everybody's camera. I want you to go get a piece of paper and do X. And then, you know, I'm going to call on you and hold it up and show us. Or I've seen scavenger hunts, or, you know, where, you know, for vocabulary lesson, you know, go find something that is, I don't know, I'm losing my fancy vocabulary word, but they'd come up with something that kids have to go find something in the house. So I like that combination. How do you take a photo with the Chromebook camera? So there's a camera app that's in there, and that's one way to do it. So how can I, okay, yeah. As far as keeping kids out of, you know, the Chromebook, couple things to think about. One would be, you know, you may, again, it's going to require some legwork, but you may want to have a Wi-Fi network that's for your kids' devices in your house that you turn off, you know, and you can, I have mine set at a schedule, so it automatically turns off every night at a certain time. The other thing you can do is, there's an extension called an extension that allows you to block certain websites on your local level. One, I'm just going to see if Stay Focused is the one that I've used in the past. So Stay Focused without, here, I'll post a link to it. So I've used this actually for myself. You know, if you spend a little too much time on Facebook or whatever, you can set a certain amount of time that you want to be on things, and it will stop you, and you also can block things completely. But you know, I haven't found the perfect solution. I definitely, and my kids are watching a lot of YouTube videos. So, I mean, the best thing, keep the Chromebooks out of the rooms if you can. Charge them out in a public area to make sure they're getting their rest, and see if you can get that Wi-Fi network turned off at a certain hour. I bought a new router that came with an application called Circle, which I'm just starting to get comfortable with. But it let me like assign devices for everybody in the house, and then set permissions for all of their devices so that they all shut off at a certain hour. So that's pretty good. Yeah, writing. There was a question about doing math and writing on the screen. Not a great way to do that. We do have a new tool for doing equation editing, but that's more for kids on algebra on up. I think you'll see more for the younger guys of handwriting and holding stuff up, and even teachers doing work on the whiteboard that the kids can see. I think that we are going to be, and it's going to be built into Google Meet soon, something called Jamboard. Jamboard is Google's whiteboard application, and so you can use a scribble tool. We do have some Chromebooks in the district that are touchscreen, but the majority are not. So you're gonna, for most part, you're using the mouse or the touchpad to do that writing, which it's not easy to do. So we're gonna have to do the best we can. Let's see here. Thank you for sharing that help desk email. Yeah, definitely, as you have questions, set that. Yeah, the any apps that are required, we are pushing, like they'll automatically be installed, and same with extensions. Otherwise, if there's things that if there's an extension that you discover, we can whitelist it and allow students to install it. Or if we feel like, oh wow, that's a great extension everyone should have, we can push it out to everyone. Yeah, technology teachers, I think that, technology teachers and the academic teachers will be teaching kids how to do this basic stuff. All right, I'm gonna look up her name because I'm horribly embarrassed that I can't remember Lisa's name, because she's an absolute dynamo at DeSalvatore. So she's the Green Meadow computer teacher and just does an amazing job with all this basic stuff. And I know she's gonna do everything she can, even in this remote situation, to get students up to speed. But you'll have classroom teachers helping out with that, because we're all relying on this technology. The first few weeks, it's going to be a work in progress. We're going to work through some things, but the thing that I'm excited about, and maybe we'll leave on this positive note, but you have the help desk. You can email that, and as well, I'm going to do some more of these sessions once we get settled a little bit. But the positive thing is that one, the teachers here, and me as a new person, I wasn't sure what would happen last March. I've only been working in the district for 3 months, but when we said, like, all right, we're going remote, you need to use Google Meet, Google Classroom, all these different tools, they were so open to that and really eager to get them and get devices. And so I think there's a real enthusiasm, and in some districts, I don't think that would be there. And the other thing is that our teachers are building up this massive bank of skills because of the requirement. And when life gets back to normal, some of the best practices we've developed, including video teacher meeting, parent meetings like this, I think will stick with us. And so I think if we can get through this together, I think it'll ultimately be a positive in a lot of ways. So, all right. Well, thank you all for attending. I know you have, going to have other questions, but you can definitely use that help desk email. You also can feel free to reach out to me personally if you want to follow up on something I said specifically here. But help desk is the best, and I will post this video as well. So thank you all. Have a good night, and I will talk to you soon. Oh, and thank you, Mark. Didn't know you'd be here, and you definitely helped save the day. So bye-bye.